Hi, everyone. So excited you're joining us for our latest Future of Food series, Hot Takes. Today, we are talking about the future of food with two trend forecasters, Andrea Hernández, who is the founder and cult leader of Snaxshot, a newsletter and community that explores and curates upcoming food and beverage trends, and Matt Newberg, founder and noted food tech expert of HNGRY, which is a media platform examining a world where technology shapes the way people eat. Both of them are preeminent thought leaders when it comes to food, and they're personally my go-tos when I want insight into what's happening in the industry. So this will be a really fun conversation because, as you'll soon see, they're extremely candid and they don't hold back. We'll have a wide-ranging discussion covering hype versus reality, the state of brands, and the future of the food industry. And I'll also leave some time at the end for Q&A, so please drop all of your burning questions in the chat as we go. I'm going to kick it off by introducing myself and then hand it over to Andrea and Matt to share their backgrounds. For those that don't know me, I'm Ashley Hartman, co-managing partner of Bluestein Ventures. Bluestein is an early stage venture firm based in Chicago, investing in the future of food with a mission to transform the food system to be better, healthier, and more sustainable. We invest across the supply chain of food, from goods on the shelf, how goods get to the shelf, and how goods are made. And now I have the pleasure of introducing Matt Newberg and Andrea Hernández. I can't do them justice, so I'm going to pass it off first to Matt to please share more about yourself and HNGRY.
Thanks so much for having me. Morning, everybody. I'm assuming it's morning for most people. I started HNGRY about 4 years ago, kind of, as I would say, is a happy accident. I was working in traditional tech as a product manager, always loved food and restaurants, had a 6-month stage at a pizzeria to try to figure out how I was going to work in food and combine what I knew about tech and my passion for food, and kind of was making some content on the side as I was consulting for a company called Cook Unity, and kind of stumbled into Ghost Kitchens, put out the first documentary about ghost kitchens in 2019. That got picked up by TechCrunch, and then I started having all these crazy conversations with people and just decided to keep my head down and keep reporting and just essentially write every week. And that morphed into what is now HNGRY, which is a subscription media company and podcast.
Andrea, can you tell us more about yourself and the genesis behind what you've created at Snaxshot?
Yeah, so I come from a marketing and PR background. So when I started Snaxshot back in peak pandemic, it started as a way of sort of exploring like the influx of things that were coming out of in that category. So like all these different kinds of beverages, like what the fuck is an adaptogen? And I wanted to do it from a lens that I really hadn't seen in the industry, which was less about like how much money they're raising and wanting to kind of unpack the social cultural like things that led to that trend in the first place, and trying to figure out like, is this, the next activated charcoal? Is it just going to be like a boom and bust, or does it have legs to stand on? And I did it kind of like more in thought of pro consumer, and kind of trying to get people to think about it outside of the VC, CPG, DTC circle jerk that I felt that it was very dominant in the conversation. So Snaxshot started off as a newsletter, but it's kind of turned itself into, and I joke that it's a cult, but it really is about sort of that exploration of these new food and beverage brands, and in what way mainstream people relate to them. And so we've literally become sort of like a international community where people share like what they find, what they explore, and their thoughts behind it. And it's been 3 years of doing that. We've done events, different countries, multiple cities, and yeah, it's beyond a newsletter at this point, I think. But I still like to, joke about it. That's kind of like a cult. It's very in the know. But yeah, so started from shit posting. Now we're here.
Yeah, I mean, the most impressive thing that both of you have done is create a community around what you're doing that goes beyond just media. And so that's a testament to the ability for both of you to predict trends and really keep your eye on the pulse. So with that, I want to kick things off with a game of hype versus reality to start. Andrea, you were quoted in New York Mag describing Erewhon, which is the uber trendy and very expensive retailer in Los Angeles, as affordable affluence. What's your take on the retailer? Is it the ideal launching pad for a brand or an overhyped niche store that's just inaccessible to most of the population?
Oh, it's both. And I can tell you this because I've had brands literally tell me that they use that validation of being, you know, the top selling beverage at Erewhon, even though it does only have 10 locations in California. They'll use it like as leverage on their deck while they're like, you know, going on their raises. And then at the same time, like, I feel like Erewhon is very much leaning into that like cult status, you know, the supreme version of like a grocery store, because that's something that our generation, I like to say, like, we're living Andy Warhol's biggest dream, like taking things that are very mundane, like a grocery item, and assigning them a status signaler in the same way that like luxury fashion items or a watch has. And you know, it's kind of like a thing too of the situation of, you know, we're not buying houses or we're not buying cars, but that like new lipstick effect of we can give ourselves that little luxury feeling with, you know, whether it's like a $15-18 smoothie. I think they're more expensive now at Erewhon. Like, it's so funny. I've literally sat in different Erewhons just looking at like how young people are actually like, are they really buying it? Is it just about creating content? And for the most part, it's been so funny to see them like not really buy anything. And I've witnessed like shoplifting by kids. Like, it's really funny. It's become sort of this like content hub where, you know, you still want to go and just post about it to, you know, get some people infuriated on TikTok, grow your following, or, you know, Chef Bay, who became an influencer by posting, like, she's got her own deals now, whatever, and she became super successful by just posting her insanely expensive hauls that she was buying as a celebrity chef. So I don't know. I feel like it's everyone's sort of effect. You see it now. There's a New York grocery store that like opened in Soho called Happier Grocery that's being dubbed the Erewhon of NYC. You have things like Foxtrot, things like Pop-Up Grocer that have similar effects. I don't know if it's a sustainable model to like replicate, but I think that Erewhon, you know, they have the West Coast. They already had celebrities buying stuff there. So like I feel like they leaned into it, and you know, now they've become that, like, they're doing incredibly well, and now they've become sort of the top tier godlike, you know, what every grocer emulates to aspire to, I guess.
Super curveball. I love the reference to Andy Warhol. If he were painting today, what would he be painting? Because I guarantee it would not be the Campbell soup can.
It'd be the Grassa bottles. It'd be like the Goodles mac and cheese, or like the Heyday canned beans. Because yes, we yassified beans. We're at that stage.
I love it. Good references. Okay, Matt, let's talk about a meaty topic, pun intended, alternative protein. The media narrative around alternative protein has gone from hyped to skeptical to downright negative in the past year. And you've written favorably about some companies like Wonder Eggs and Chunk Foods recently. Do you think there's potential for the industry, and what technologies would you bet on today?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're moving, there's different phases of where we are in the alt protein kind of evolution. I think we're moving way past. I think what's happening is we realize that like the Beyonds and Impossibles of the world were just using commodity ingredients, overly processed, not healthy, you know, pea isolates that you could just buy, anyone can buy. So there's no real proprietary technology. I mean, yes, Impossible had the heme trying to mimic, you know, the bloodiness of a normal burger, but really these things are just cobbling together different ingredients that are commodities, and in many cases they're GMOs and commodity crops and it's not really creating a better system. It's kind of a farce. The things that I would be betting on are, well, I think taking a step back before we even look at the technology, it's like how you're set up as a business. And the thing that I'm really seeing right now is that companies in this current funding environment are having to decide whether they're tech companies or they are brands, right? So doing both is where the valuations get really out of control, and then your focus is just like kind of scattershot, and the chances of success are a lot harder. So, one example of this would be, Perfect Day. They were, a fermentation, precision fermentation platform trying to replicate dairy using microbes. And, they had a brand portfolio that they were essentially acquiring brands and spinning up their own brands that were using this technology and having to make those sell on the grocery shelves. And now they basically spun that out and decided we're just going to work with other brands, well-known ice cream brands, well-known milk brands that, or other startups that want to just do the branding component. And I think that is the first question to answer. And then you got to dive into the technology. I think fermentation as a whole is very interesting. That being said, I think precision fermentation isn't going to get us enough volumes to actually make a dent. And I do think in general, like replicating one-to-one, things like juicy marbles, bone ribs, making that plant-based is just also like a red herring. I think we need to start creating better products that are healthier for you. So I actually think like they just need to be simpler, less processed. That's why I was gravitating a lot towards meaty and corn and prime roots. Corn's been around forever, but like they're using, it's fungi based meat that is essentially fermented mycelium. I'm not going to get into the whole details of how it all works, but we're going to be seeing a lot more like whole muscle cuts that are more naturally they're going to be based on more natural ingredients, and I think those are the kinds of things I'd be looking for. Also just like products that are just more like superfoods in their nature that are going to be able to give us, even more nutrients than we would have previously gotten, more fiber. Maybe they have a little bit less protein than traditional steak, but more fiber or more amino acids. And, I don't think they should look one-to-one with what we're used to. And I think there's almost like too much of that going on where it's getting out of control. And that's where I also think like a lot of the cell cultivated meat is really making a big mistake. I mean, you're just basically growing cancer in cells. We can get into that another time, but growing cancer in petri dishes and it's no bueno.
Going to other controversy.
I have a hot take on that. Like, I mean, it's so funny because you're saying that, and all I'm thinking about is like, just eat a fucking bean burger. But also, like, my funniest thing that I came across was like recently, Green Giant, the one who sells like the canned corn and like the peas and stuff. So they recently launched like these veggie tots. That's like dinosaur nuggets, whatever. And I'm like, oh my god, if Green Giant is coming in to this like alt, I guess, like sort of space, then it's over for you hoes. Like, because like they literally are like the OG plant-based, like they're fucking vegetables. But I don't know, I feel like it's something that I think about NotCo. I was going to ask you, Matt, like what are your thoughts around NotCo, right? Because like they say they have this technology, they use like cabbage and pineapple to create better texture, alt milk, whatever. They have this like ongoing partnership with Kraft. You can find their products literally everywhere, like in Whole Foods across the US, etc. I don't know, I was just curious what you think of them.
I don't know too much about them, but when I checked them out at Expo West, the labels are not clean enough for me as a consumer. I really stay away from anything that is like seitan, which is just like literally gluten. There are people who try to make like turkeys for vegans during Thanksgiving and literally you will just spike the hell out of your glucose, out of your blood sugar. It's like insane. So I think we're moving on past, like, they're built on the wrong platforms, and I think we have to look towards other things. I'm not totally against like soy, like Chunk Foods, as you mentioned, is using fermented soy flour, but I don't think there's anything new under the sun with the NotCo.
I can't wait
from
to
a tech
see
standpoint.
I can't wait to see Green Giant's new marketing platform. We're here. It's over for you, hoes. I think that's the new tagline. So thanks, Andrea. I want to talk about one more topic here. Sober curiosity. So sober curiosity has gained a lot of momentum. So you have brands like Athletic Brewing, which is a non-alcoholic beer brand, raising $50 million in funding from Keurig. And then there are non-alcoholic cocktails getting their own section across the hot restaurants and cocktail bars all over the country. Andrea, you were really early to identify the trend. You wrote about it 3 years ago. You've witnessed its evolution. How do you feel about the trend today? Are you still bullish on non-alc and low-alc? And then do you think we'll look back at the alcohol industry and wonder, if it was like big tobacco?
Wait, so this is so funny. I just saw a tweet yesterday that was this influencer, whatever, saying like showing her sober fridge. And it was so funny because the caption on the tweet was like, this is worse than being like a homeless alcoholic, because like the whole fridge was filled with like sugar and like all these like NA beverages, Coke and all these things. And I thought it was so funny because I think, NA is not new, right? Crodino has been doing it for 60 plus years. I don't know if you guys know the little bottles of like their aperitif things, and like it's like an Aperol, but it's non-alcoholic. So I think the biggest thing that happened in 2020 was like this. I think it started in mid 2010s. Obviously, I like to refer to that decade as the better for you chasm. And so you start to see like, the hard seltzers become a thing because people want like less calories in their drinks, etc. And like, oh, you have just like the magic spoons, the halo tops, everything is like a better for you situation. And you start to see brands like Liar and Spiritless, like in the mid 2010s, they come out. And I think that, pandemic helped sort of accelerate that boom of the new brands like Gia, for example. And I think if you think about the psychology behind why people are even drinking these things in the first places, it used to be like in restaurants, you had the limitations of, it was either like a plain boring seltzer when you opted out of drinking, or then you had the other extreme of the sugary, over infantilizing drinks like a virgin pina colada or a virgin whatever, daiquiri or whatever. And so I think the genius of what has happened with these new brands is that, one, it's like a lot more complex, bitter profiles that also stem from the bitter sodas movement that became a lot more popular as people were trying to find like, oh, I'm in a restaurant, I want to have an adult drink. And so, they would order soda and bitters. And you have brands like For Better For Worse that canified that, RTD'd that. Gia, I think it's very genius because, they did a couple of runs in their formulation because I think it skewed very sweet at first, and now they've gotten that sort of bitter profile going on. But the marketing genius of everything that they do is in reference of aperitivo culture in the Mediterranean. So like to me, this industry learned what the alcohol industry learned a long time ago, is that marketing and good branding can sell you a literal depressant, which is the alcohol, and sell it to you as an euphoric elixir. That's what alcohol does, right? It's like, it's like literally a depressant, but it's like all happy hour and Corona at the beach, whatever. I also think that, the wearables, being able to see how alcohol actually impacts you in real time, whether it's your sleep, whether it's like your glucose, whatever. I also think that that's encouraged people to also maybe say, hey, I don't want to drink as much. I don't think that the NA brands, and I've talked to a couple of founders, like, they're not really wanting to market themselves to just the sober people. They want to get the people who drink to opt out, at some point, or take a break from drinking and use their products instead. But I think it's interesting to see this. I don't know, it's like a state of parity at this point to answer your question, like, am I still bullish about it? Well, I think it's really funny to see non-alcoholic brands launch alcoholic brands, and then alcoholic brands launch NA versions of themselves. So I don't really know. I feel like peak beverage, I try to say we passed that years ago. I feel like, it's becoming a a state of so many options out there, and you have these NA bottle shops that have opened, like Boisson. Pernod Ricard has been building their NA portfolio. They've invested in Gia. They obviously invested in Boisson as well. I don't think any, like all these other shops that are coming after, like I don't really think, I've already seen a couple of them like close, right? It's like these like independent retailers. I don't know if that's gonna like be something that's gonna be sustainable, but it is interesting to see NA adoption like be fomented in places like New Orleans, Houston. Like you can find Gia in Austin. Like I've been to a restaurant where I was like, oh, there's Gia at the bar. That's insane. And Gia is also like, I think the player to kind of like keep an eye on, because like Melanie's brand, you know, if you can get the French to get in on NA aperitif, like you did something well. And so she's like her brand is starting to permeate, you know, you can find it now in places in Paris. And I don't know, I feel like there's gonna be like obviously the athletic brewing ones like Gia, but I think that the rest are just gonna implode. And to like end this, if you don't have a canned version of your NA, the bottles are not gonna make it. Like anybody who's still on a bottle, like that's just not gonna happen, because if you think about it, like how am I gonna go as a new consumer into this space? Like, okay, I wanna start doing sober stuff, but why am I gonna spend $40 on a bottle of something I've never fucking tried? I don't know what NA wine tastes like. Like that's why you see this whole pivot of everybody having like a canned version of themselves, because I do think it helps with adoption, because the price point is easier to get into. Like, oh, okay, it's like a $4 can, $5 can versus like, well, I'm gonna have this whole bottle of something that I didn't try, I don't like, and I don't fucking like it, and it's just gonna go to trash. So I would say take everything with a grain of salt, but I do think that there's some brands that have the potential of creating like a good family of brands beyond just like that one SKU, like Gia.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're kind of at early innings of the industry, and now we're seeing the proliferation of competition, but with better products, we'll get kind of more and more adoption over time. But love all your takes on the specific brands to watch out for. So let's switch gears and talk about brands for a second. You've both written extensively about the rise in celebrity founded companies. And so we've seen a lot of success here, but we've also seen some challenges. You know, for example, Mr. Beast, the YouTube star, partnered with Virtual Dining Concepts to launch a delivery-only restaurant chain of burgers. But in the last few months, he's had a major falling out with Virtual Dining Concepts, and there are a ton of lawsuits flying back and forth. What do you think for each of you, what do you think makes a creator-led brand successful or not? And do you think we're oversaturated, or there's still kind of headroom here?
Go ahead, Andrea. I'll fill in wherever you.
No. I want you to talk about that.
You both have a lot of thoughts on this topic, I know. So
I don't have a ton of thoughts on it, and just kind of, you know, I think there's great examples and there's a lot of bad examples, and there's also like successful stories like Prime, but they're also throwing caution to the wind with the amount of caffeine that they're putting in. So like how you define success is also another question. But
okay.
But
I'm gonna comment. I have a lot of comments on this, and it's very interesting because I've been interviewed about this, like not just like on the CPG side, but also like on the spirits side, right? Like every fucking celebrity owns a tequila brand now. There's even like a brand in New York that has an ad that's like not celebrity owned, which I feel like it's fucking hilarious. But again, sort of like a parody state. Obviously, everybody's trying to replicate Casamigos, Aviation. You have The Rock with that Terramana that I think it's being valued at $3.5 billion, which I find insane. But I would say, so two things. Like I feel like in the spirits realm, I think it's very different. So like you see a lot of beauty brands have been falling like left and right. All these like celebrities that had all these beauty, like Brad Pitt came out with like a skincare line, whatever. I think that it's because of the category, like with spirits, celebrities have already that status symbol that a lot of these spirits companies, like, you know, like Ciroc, or like aviation gin in its time, like aviation, no, what's it called? It was something like another tequila, like in 2000s, that it was like on that show, that HBO show, I think, Entourage. Like I think that it makes sense because that's what the celebrity gives. It gives it this status. If it's like the right pairing, like it makes sense. You know, I get why Kendall Jenner, you know, has her fancy 818 stuff. Like I feel like it makes more sense. When it comes to CPG, I feel like a lot of people see them like they underestimate them. But when you look at the people that they're hiring to build these CPG companies, for example, Emma Chamberlain has ex Red Bull executives as like the president and, you know, all the major like job roles. Prime partnered with Congo, which is like a distributing company that has like some big energy drinks already. Like they have some established brands. Like they went in with the distributor itself, so it's not like they are, you know, the ones that have to come up with all these different things. But in the beverage game, it's all about distribution, obviously. So they have that major advantage. It's now being reported that they're doing 250 million by the end of this year, which is insane because the brand is literally a year old. And then Mr. Beast, the Feastables, he has a lot of people from like RX, like RX bar, like people that used to work at that company. So, and you know, partnering with retailers like Walmart. And I've spoken to some Walmart people that say like, we're going to double down on this creator-led brands because they are making us, for this younger generation, think about Gen Alpha. Gen Alpha, I like to call them like youth tube generation. So they're not growing up with TV. Their version of celebrity is going to be someone like, you know, Northwest, or much older ones, of course, now, Emma Chamberlain, Logan Paul. So for them, that $2.50 drink of Prime is the equivalent of an autograph, you know? So like it's become a thing amongst Gen Alpha to go and take pictures at Walmart with the cutoffs of Mr. Beast. Like millennials weren't doing that. We were thinking about Target as like the bougie, you know, style of retailer, and now you have Walmart becoming sort of this like cool hangout for kids to go and like buy their Prime and buy their Mr. Beast and buy their Emma Chamberlain canned coffee. And I think it's something that we're gonna have to wait it out. I think that with this like whole new like creator-led brands, I do think that there's gonna be people that are gonna do it correctly because they are hiring the right kinds of people to help them. Like I feel like if it's like same if a big food incubated a brand and they started like putting like this like all-star team of all these other people who have created successful CPG brands in the past. And so I think that there's a lot of dismissiveness about it, but I think that it's too early. I feel like Mr. Beast has been getting judged a lot because of his past mistake with that whole like ghost kitchen thing and how the quality was really bad, etc. But for these kids, it's another kind of affordable affluence. And I think with the whole caffeine scenario, I think it's such bullshit because 200 milligrams of caffeine is also what Celsius has, and all these other like standard like caffeine beverages. I think the only difference is that they are accusing them of marketing these things to kids when they actually don't. They actually say like this is something for 18 and above, and they conflate the energy drink versus like the actual water drink, which is what most parents they buy their kids. And it's so funny, the behavior of how this has become such a signaler is that I have parents tell me like, oh yeah, when you wrote about this, literally my kid will refill his bottle with water. It doesn't even have to be Prime, just so he could still carry like the bottle of Prime. So I think that it's something that this new generation is going to be the one that dictates whether Prime becomes something of a Gatorade competitor, or whether, you know, Gatorade's trying to emulate their play as well. So like they came out with a mystery flavor. Logan Paul had done that before, and they're trying to really morph them. Like it's very Prime coded, the new things that Gatorade is trying to do. But I would say give it a shot because this generation, like the eldest, are just barely 13. So I do think that creator-led brands have an opportunity of being able to grow alongside Gen Alpha, but only time will tell, I would say.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think you kind of pulled out a few important points though, which is like how authentic is it for that brand to be associated with the celebrity, and or is it just someone kind of slapping their name on something? And then like how involved are you? I think the lesson with Mr. Beast was he outsourced a lot of the execution to virtual dining concepts and, you know, lost control of the brand over time. But Andrea, you mentioned Gen Alpha, and I know you're a self-described product oracle. What do you think Gen Alpha will be eating 10 years from now when they're built?
So it's so funny because like that's the big question I've been trying to really look into. So I like to take a step back and say, okay, millennials are the better for you. We took the pendulum way to the extreme of, you know, this parody state where we literally have Palo Santo water. Like, I'm not even fucking kidding. We have beverages that literally list their function as spiritual uplift. So I think we went so much, like the pendulum has swung so much on the other side. You're starting to see with Gen Z, this sort of pushback against this overcorrection. So like Gen Z brands like Omson, for example, it's not telling you like, oh, this is like a functional, you know, new kind of condiment, or another beverage brand called Immorel, which is a mushroom tea that's a Gen Z led brand as well. They have very like it's like a complete rejection of like the trendy pastel pristine adaptogen bullshit. They literally just say like, we're just a mushroom tea. Like, it's not like they're promising you all these different like calm and meditation and, you know, you're going to get tongued down by the Dalai Lama by the end of this drink. Like, it's just very much like a more sober approach to, yes, we need better products for us, but we don't like have to have all these bullshit around it. And then with Gen Alpha, what's so funny is that I do think that we may see this like generation grow up to sort of counterculture movement. And because like you have these kids being grown up with keto puffs and like vegetable, like there's this brand called Peekaboo that's literally like zucchini ice cream. Like, I would fucking kill my parents if they're like, I'm a kid and my parents are like, all my other friends are eating ice cream and my parents are like, oh, you know what, like, here's your veggie ice cream. Like, literally like fucking emancipate for my parents. Like, you know, I feel like we've gotten like millennial parents are basically like instilling their own sort of groupified version of what good food and beverage is. And I think that we might grow up to see this generation be a complete rejection. And it's so funny because Pepsi like continues to do so well. Like, it's so funny. Like, I like to call it the snack paradox. Like, here on one side, we have millennials fighting so much for like, oh, sugar is bad, everything's demonized, like, fuck this ingredient and all things. Meanwhile, the snack daddies of the world, which I like Pepsi and Kraft and all these like big ones, like their earnings are like still like, they're like still cashing in. So, you know, the most popular snack amongst Gen Z is fucking goldfish, you know, like these people are still like embracing these brands. And I do think similar to how cigarettes are making a comeback, because they're so like in some places they're like the extreme ban of them. You know, there's been parties where they come out with like little like plates like with like fruits around cigarettes, whatever. It's like very chic and very European core, whatever. But it's so funny to see like amongst this generation where it's like vape culture, whatever. Now this like, oh yeah, we're getting back into smoking cigarettes, whatever. Do you know? Yeah. Like, I feel like, yeah.
It's always, like there's always a pendulum switching back and forth and back and forth. But I want to talk about the tech side for one sec before we kind of open to questions. Matt, what do you think the technologies we should be betting on to disrupt the food industry in the future?
More Mr. Beast burgers. Just kidding. So I'm wearing this Ultra Human sleep tracker, but it's also going to be a hub for my CGM data, my exercise data, my VO2 max, my how much time I spend doing zone 1 versus zone 2 cardio. I think right now we have lots of disparate sources of health data on ourselves. Like, if you think about what we know about our cars, we don't have like nearly as much diagnostics on our bodies as we could have. But this is starting to make its way to like this whole like cast of people that are trying to do longevity, like brand themselves as like longevity experts and whatnot. But that will, I think, the Apple Watch integration of a non-invasive continuous glucose monitor. So it's essentially being able to tell you what your blood sugar is doing in real time based on like essentially lasers on your skin will unlock lots of interesting applications. We'll be able to correlate and understand exactly like how certain environments and certain lifestyles and certain foods that we're eating are impacting our health to a new level that is going to really align incentives in between the massive food industry and healthcare. And we spend twice as much on healthcare as we do food. And a lot of these are, chronic diseases that are being caused by the very foods that we're buying. So we need to kind of align everyone around this concept. It's going to take a long time, but I'm very like, this is the thing I think right now to be paying attention to over the next decade is going to be an Amazon, an Apple, these larger companies getting very horizontal, starting to own more and more pieces of, various health clinics, or even get into restaurants and nutritionists and using AI to essentially synthesize all this data. It's really fascinating. I actually just put out a podcast about this this week, if you want to check it out. So yeah, this is the thing I'm the most like excited about. I'm less excited about a lot of the delivery oriented things these days, and the convenience related things that are just kind of novelties. It feels like at this point at post pandemic, I do think online grocery is a necessity for a big piece of the population, but I think generally I'm very excited to see how everything gets integrated into this new like kind of personalized nutrition platform.
Yeah,
I will say like, oh, sorry, I just wanted to chime in with 100% agree with the whole wearable thing. So on top of his podcast, I also invite you to read the piece I wrote on wearable wonkas, where I actually have already found like CPG brands, like snack brands and beverage brands that are tailoring what you gave, like given like information from your wearables, or like the ones that are like, can prove that they won't give you a sugar spike. So if you're really interested in like getting into that whole thing, I also recommend you check out our very extensive deep dive on it.
Yes, please check out both HNGRY and Snaxshot if you haven't figured out. Both of them are huge thought leaders in the field, so you need to be following them with great enthusiasm. Okay, I want to do 2 rapid fire questions, so like 1 word from each of you, and then we'll do a couple Q&A. So Matt, what's the craziest fact you've learned about the U.S. food system?
I think I kind of hinted at this, but we spend about $900 billion treating chronic diseases like hypertension, obesity, diabetes, and we spend just over $1 trillion. So just like $105 million more on food at home, aka groceries, every year. So that is insane. And a lot of these things, we can reduce the amount we spend on the back end of things by just giving people better products. But the food industry, big food, refuses to do anything that hurts shareholder value.
Andrea, what is 1 new trendy ingredient or flavor you're bullish on? Just 1.
Paraxanthine. I don't know how to.
Us too.
I think that's
PX.
how you pronounce it. Yeah.
Yeah, PX is what I call it. Okay, both of you, 1 word answer. What has been the most surprising shutdown or failure in the food industry recently? Matt, do you have 1?
I was gonna say Blue Apron, but their shareholders got a two bagger real quick. But the App Harvest I just thought was really fascinating because they weren't doing vertically farmed indoor produce. They were just doing like greenhouses, which Gotham Greens has been very successful doing. So just goes to show you, how hard it is in today's environment to continue funding these things, even if they are less advanced.
I would say, to me, the ones that I have found interesting are, 1, like Mondelez shutting down like their internally created brands. So like literally quietly like saying like, okay, this is not gonna, they're like shutting down these brands and in favor of like, yeah, well, we can't like, they like internal R&D, I think, is having like a crisis, because also like Coca-Cola, it looks like they're also going to be sunsetting their AHA, which was like a competitor to Bubbly. And they're like, we're going to focus on just like our acquisition, which was Topo Chico. So I think it's a very interesting like canary in the coal mine of like, is Snack Daddy being able to like innovate within, or is it just going to be something forward from now that it's just going to be all about M&A sprees at this point? So that's my take.
Amazing. Okay, I want to open up for a couple of questions. So Matt, we have a couple of questions on this controversial topic of cancer in cultivated meat. So maybe you want to elaborate.
Oh God, what can of worms did I open? Okay. I'm not an expert in this, but if you look up immortalized cells, that's essentially what they're using for cultivated meat. The definition of them is that either tumorous cells that do not stop dividing, or cells that have been artificially manipulated to proliferate indefinitely and can thus be cultured over several generations. To me, it's like, it's not going to give me cancer, but it is a cancer I am putting, like that is the definition of cancer. And it's not necessarily good or bad, just take it as it is. And so you're putting something into your body that, you know, is a product of like essentially some form of cancer cells. I mean, this is not, we're going so far from nature. It's absolutely insane. Go watch Common Ground documentary. I'm not saying regenerative agriculture is going to solve the world's problems, but it's an interesting solution. I think we need to go a little bit back to our roots when it comes to like uneffing our current environmental crisis, and like just look at the industrialized food system over the last few decades. Post World War II, the amount of food we've created, we can create enough calories for everyone. And in fact, we throw so much food down the toilet into the landfills. It's not about that at this point. People are overfed, but but aren't getting the right nutrients. So let's just, I don't have the solutions, but I know that this is the absolute wrong direction. I mean, we probably could afford to invest in it just as a potential solution, but all signs that we're currently seeing how long it's going to take, by the time it's even commercially viable, forget the PR headlines. They're all wrong. They're not able to actually even do more than serve you at a BS restaurant in San Francisco.
Everyone should read the Wired. There was an article in Wired a couple weeks ago on Upside Foods that.
But it's not only that. I find it, sorry, it gets me so enraged when I see all these money, like all money being poured into companies that are like Vow. I think it's like Vow, VOW, where they're like creating shit that doesn't even like, why the fuck am I going to eat mammoth meat? Like, how is this solving our fucking food crisis? So I do think the industry itself shoots itself in the fucking foot by doing these kinds of investments, or like powering these kinds of companies where it's like, oh yeah, we'll have alt zebra meat, alt giraffe meat. Like, who the fuck is eating that in the first place? Like, so I agree with you, Matt, by the way. I've been like, kudos to all you said.
We promise.
I'm not an expert.
Takes here.
I'm not an expert in this space, but like I've seen enough things that like I think there's enough, we can go back to some of the old practices, and like we can invest in the software that powers it. There's other investable opportunities. Like, we don't need to have a solution in search of a problem like this. The problem is too great to just be focused on like the most like advanced technological thing.
One more last question. I know I'm keeping people over, but we had a question on Ozempic and weight loss drugs. How do you think of them and their impact on the food industry?
I think, well, right now you're starting to see the side effects and stuff that are coming. I don't think it's like widely accessible to. Like, I feel like we're seeing it from a very myopic US like vision, and I don't even think that it's like as much as people are saying, because there's people that are actually diabetic that because of all this boom from celebrities and wherever, they haven't been able to get their like medication. So I think that like I would say it's the hack that is like comes with, of course, like something to pay. So like one of the side effects that's been reported, it's like a bowel paralysis. For me, I would focus less on looking at Ozempic and Wegovy. I would look at like we were talking earlier, who are the brands that are building alongside like, you know, what wearables can offer. So like brands like Good Idea that the founder of Oatly created. They created this beverage that with an ingredient that if you take it with meals, they can show you how it prevents your blood sugar from spiking. It all comes down to blood sugar. So like what these medicines are doing is helping you regulate your blood sugar levels that then lead to like, you know, less of an appetite or whatever. And I feel like Matt said, I think it's more about thinking about what is being enabled to do this in a way that's not all like synthetic, or that I'm gonna like literally have like gallbladder issues, or like I'm not gonna be able to shit forever because like I fucked up my, you know, bowel system. So I don't know, I feel like there's so much conversation around the fucking drug itself instead of like, well, there's already companies, like there's another company called Joy Days that is a low glycemic cookie that again like can prove via the monitors that it doesn't spike your sugar. So I would say go somewhere else with that. Look at something else.
Shocker that we're looking for a quick fix instead of actually solving the root problem. But okay, I want to let people go. You guys are both incredible. Thank you for having this conversation with me. I love talking to both of you. So having you both in a conversation together was a complete pleasure. So for all of your hot takes, please sign up for HNGRY and Snaxshot. They are both luminaries, and cannot thank them enough for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for having me. Bye.
Bye, guys.